My name is Anna, and this is my own story. I came back to America after a week on the road, the kind of week that leaves grit under your nails and a bus map still rolling in your head. Work had sent me from New York City to Chicago and then home to Cleveland. The late train woke me out after midnight. I paid $32 for a taxi that smelled like coffee and rain, and I asked the driver to take Birch Street slowly so I could look at the houses. When our small blue house came into view, 2 windows like kind eyes, a crooked rail on the steps, and a porch that remembers every boot, it felt like the first deep breath after a long day. My sister, Laya, was waiting on that porch as if she had been there for hours. She held the post with both hands. Her knuckles were white, and her face had that tight look I knew from when we were kids and hiding a broken vase. I waved and dragged my suitcase over the same crack in the walk that always tries to trip me. The wheels rattled in their old, friendly way. "Hey," I said, smiling just because I was home, because this was America and our little house, and the night was kind. I thought she'd smile back. She did not. Her mouth trembled, and her eyes flicked to the door and back to me like a bird that cannot choose a branch. I set my bag on the first porch plank. The wood gave its hollow knock in reply, the sound that says you belong here. From the doorway, I could see into our living room. The couch that sags in the middle, the maple side table we haggled down to $60 at a garage sale, the framed map of America with pins in the cities we love. The house smelled like lemon soap and the last warm air of late summer. A moth circled the porch light and then rested on the white paint like a thumbprint. "What happened?" I asked. "Is it money? Is it the car? Is it Mom's old house papers again?" I had a list of small problems we could fix with time and common sense. Lila did not wait for another word. She blurted, clear and sharp, "I married your rich fiancé. Now, please don't cry." The sentence landed between us like a box that is heavier than it looks. I heard the light hum and the soft buzz of that tired moth. The street went quiet, the way a street goes quiet when it is listening. It felt like the world took one big step to the left and forgot to bring me with it. My knees let go without asking me first. I reached for the rail and caught nothing but air. The boards jumped up. The sky dropped down. The dark slipped into my ears like water. I did not scream. I folded and fell, soft as a paper letter falling from a table. "Do you need a hand?" called a man's voice from across the street. It was Mr. Whitaker, who has lived opposite us so long that his mailbox paint fades and brightens between summers. "I've got her," Lila said, and she did. She is smaller than me, but shock gives people a kind of borrowed strength. She got me inside and onto the old couch. She slid a pillow under my neck and tucked the throw over my legs. A cool cloth found my forehead. In the kitchen, the tap ran and closed. In the hall, the clock counted seconds like coins on a wooden table. The house did the thing old houses do when they love you. It held me, and it did not ask any questions. When I woke, I rose through the dark the way a diver swims toward light. It was still night, or maybe the edge of morning. The room had that thin blue color that knows the sun is near. Lila stood in the doorway with a glass of water and eyes that had cried and dried and cried again. I opened my mouth to ask the time, or to ask if she was hurt, or to ask if this was a dream. Instead, I laughed. It came out wild and bright. I laughed so hard that tears ran into my ears and tickled my neck. The sound startled her. It startled me, too. "Anna," she said, scared and cross at once. "Don't. Please don't." She thought I had broken. I understood why. But the laugh did not come from shock. I said her name softly. "Lila." My voice sounded steady and older. She hurried to the chair and did not lean back, as if a deeper seat might pull her under. She set the water on the maple table, and a thin line slid from the rim and made a small round coin on the wood. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I married him. Grant. There wasn't time to tell you. We went to the courthouse. He paid $120 for the license. I wore that plain white dress you liked because it felt simple and good. We did it quickly. I was afraid that if we waited, you would come home and it would hurt you more." She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, like a child. Please don't cry.
Grant.
His name lay in the room like a heavy coat thrown over a chair. I looked at the coat on the hook by the door. The one he bragged cost 400 pounds, the one that still held the clean, borrowed smell of a store that was not ours. He had a way of holding a wine list like it was a plan. He had a way of saying the names of cities, New York City, Chicago, Cleveland, as if each name alone could build a ladder to the life he wanted. He talked about money, as if money were a friend who might shake his hand and call him brother, if only he wore the right shoes. He could make a bill seem like a bouquet. He could make a price tag sound like a promise. I knew those tricks. I had learned them the hard way, number by number. Listen to me, I said, and I met her eyes and kept them. I breathed in and felt the house around us. Old wood steady under new paint, simple things in their places. The couch, the clock, the lemon soap. Each one is a small truth you can touch. You asked me not to cry, I said. I am not going to cry. I stood, slow but sure, and the room tilted and then settled, like a small boat that finds its balance. I pulled the curtain back with 2 fingers. Mr. Whitaker's porch light had gone dark. The street was empty. The blue in the window was a little thinner. Morning was coming even if it did not know it yet. I let the curtain fall and turned back to my sister. I'm not broken, I said. I'm free. The words surprised her. They surprised me too, but they were true in the way the rail is crooked and the step is chipped and the paint is blue. I wasn't happy that a promise had been bent out of shape. I wasn't happy that a wedding had been rushed like a sale on a street corner. I was happy because I knew something Lila did not know yet, something real and countable, measured in dollars and in facts and in the weight of a ring I had placed in a drawer before I left for Chicago. I stood there in our small American house, with the map of America on the wall and the smell of soap in the air, and I laughed again, not from pain but from joy, because I knew something Lila did not know yet. I sat up on the couch and told Lila we needed to talk, not fast, not loud, just steady. The house was quiet but strong around us, like a hand at our backs. I'm not going to cry, I said. I need to tell you what I learned before my trip. She pressed the damp cloth to her face and nodded. She looked small on the edge of the chair, as if one wrong word could push her off. The clock in the hall ticked like a calm heart. I thought of the pins on our map of America, of the porch boards that know our steps. I thought of truth, the kind you can count. Then I began. The first crack had shown up months ago, when Grant told me about a condo near the lake in Cleveland and a string of deals in New York City that would set us up for life. He wore a sharp navy suit on those nights, and he made sure to hang it where everyone could see. One evening, when I lifted the jacket to make room in the closet, a tag slipped out of the inner pocket, a rental slip, $1.20 a day, due back Monday by noon. He said the 700-pound watch on his wrist was a family piece, but the crown stuck, and the brand name was spelled wrong on the clasp. The car he posed with in front of the house had a dealer plate and a thin paper tag tucked in the back window. Later, I found the lease statement in his glove box, $1,200 a month for something that never truly belonged to him. Money talk came easy to him, like a song he had practiced. He would hold a menu like a stage prop and order the most expensive thing with a brave little nod. Then, when the server walked away, he would lean close and whisper that a payment was stuck, and would I mind sending him $85 just this once, because his account would clear at midnight. Once, at a fancy steakhouse on Euclid Avenue, he handed over his card with a flourish, and while the server was gone, he asked me to spot him a small bridge, his words, until a bonus landed. The bonus never did. When we got home, I found a folded bill in his coat pocket for the suit rental, 3 days at $120, a total $360, plus a late fee that made the numbers feel like a bruise. I told myself there was nothing wrong with wanting nice things. I told myself he was just trying, but wanting and pretending are not the same. The night I knew, truly knew, was a Tuesday on West 14th. He said he had to meet a buyer. I had the afternoon off and a slow, heavy feeling in my chest that would not leave. I took a walk and drifted toward the corner where the old garage sits, the one with the hand-painted sign and the smell of oil that lives in the air. And there he was, in a gray shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. Grant. He was not talking with the buyer. He was bent over a small car, his hands black with grease, his face fixed in a worried line as he tried to free a stubborn bolt. A woman named Rosa, the manager, saw me watching and waved me into the shade. She offered me water. She said he was part-time, that he was good with carburetors but late with lunch money, and no, he did not own the place. She said it kindly, like she was sorry to be the one holding the light. I am not ashamed to say I walked home slowly and quietly. There is nothing wrong with honest work. A mechanic keeps America moving. But lies break the axles of trust. That night, when he bragged that he had $50,000 saved, I asked him to teach me his secret. He opened a budgeting app to show me a sample plan, and for a breath-long second, the true balance flashed, $312. He covered the screen and laughed, saying the display was lagging. At the top of his drawer, I later found letters about overdrafts and a note he had written to himself. Look rich, be rich. As if the first could ever become the second by force of will. I did not confront him that night. I packed for my trip to Chicago and then to New York City and back to Cleveland. I put the ring in the maple table drawer beside the spare keys. I wrote a short note to myself on the back of an old receipt. Truth is better than shine. I needed space to think in straight lines, not the loops his stories made. On the train, I watched the fields and the towns pass and felt my chest grow light. Each mile felt like a clean bill paid in full. By the time I crossed into New York City, I knew I would end the engagement. All that was left was to say it. So when I came home and heard Lila's words on the porch, I married your rich fiancé. My body fell before my mind could speak. And when I woke, I laughed, not from shock, but from the sudden lift of a weight I had already laid down. Lila's face went through clouds as I spoke. Doubt, hope, fear, shame. She searched for a ledge. He told me about the condo, she said, almost to herself. He said the mortgage was a breeze. He said his watch was insured for £700. He said his car would be ours next year. She rubbed her thumb over the edge of the damp cloth like it could erase the numbers. I told her about the garage on West 14th. I told her about the $120 suits and the $1,200 lease and the $85 whispers and the $312 truth. I told her there is no sin in being poor and no sin in fixing cars. The sin is in turning a person into a ladder and climbing them to reach a dream that is not real. She looked around our living room like it had changed shape, but it hadn't. The couch still sagged in the middle. The map of America still held our pins. The porch still waited for morning. He said he loved me, she whispered. He said he loved you before that. I nodded. He loves the look of money, I said. He loves rooms where people believe. But love without truth is a costume. It will tear when you breathe. She shut her eyes and took a long, square breath and opened them again. Something steady moved into her face, like a light that had been behind a door all along. We sat there while the blue window turned gray, and then pearl. The city woke in small sounds. A truck on the far block, a bird on the gutter, a neighbor's kettle beginning to whisper. What do we do? She asked. I reached for her hand. First, we don't blame ourselves for someone else's show, I said. Then we count what is real. We have this house. We have our work. We have each other. We have the truth. She nodded, and a tear slid down, but it was clean, not the hot kind. I brought her the glass, and she drank. I laughed. I said, because I was free. The words settled in the room like coins in a jar, clear, simple, and ours. Outside, the light climbed our porch rail and, inch by inch, showed everything as it was. The mask had come off. When I finished telling Lila everything, the garage on West 14th, the rented suits, the £700 watch with a misspelled clasp, it was as if all the air left the room. Her lips parted, then closed again. She tried to stand, and didn't quite make it. Her knees buckled the way mine had on the porch, and I caught only her sleeve before she sank onto the rug and tipped sideways against the couch. For a breath, The house hummed in my ears, and I thought the lights had dimmed. I lifted her head to the pillow and called her name until her eyes fluttered open. When she focused on me, she made a small sound that I will never forget, a sound like a string pulled too tight. Then she cried into my shoulder, not loud, not dramatic, just steady tears that wet my collarbone while I held on and felt the truth settle around us like cold wind. The wind kept blowing in the days that followed. It came through the mail slot first, hard and unsentimental. A crisp envelope with a barcode, and his name brought a suit rental statement. 3 days at $120, a late fee, total $360, past due. Another bill arrived with a balance of $7,480 from a credit card he had assured Lila he kept, only for points. The car dealer sent a notice with red letters across the top. The monthly lease at $1,200 was 2 payments behind. I lined the envelopes on the maple table, and we read them like road signs to a place we did not want to go. Lila stared at the numbers until they stopped being symbols and turned back into weight. It was not the money alone. It was the difference between the shine he sold and the brass we could afford. It was the proof that every boast had been a borrowed coat that would have to be returned. We did the ordinary, brave things people do when a life splits along a seam. Lila called the courthouse to ask what a quick marriage meant when it came apart even quicker. I found the number for a lawyer in downtown Cleveland whose office had a view of the river and a waiting room plant that tried its best to look alive. Her name was Margaret Owens. She wore plain shoes and a plain gray dress, and she didn't mistake plain for weak. She listened without interrupting, then wrote down dates and totals and asked simple questions in an even voice. The consultation fee was $150, and as I counted out the bills at her desk, I felt oddly grateful to be paying for something that was real. Ms. Owens slid a thin packet across to Lila and pointed to the lines that mattered. "You will be fine," she said. "It will not feel fine at first, but you will be." While we waited for papers to be stamped and filed, the house changed color the way a lake does when a cloud passes. It had always been a little blue place on a little American street, but now the light seemed truer, like we had rubbed a film off the glass. We took the watch with the bad clasp from the hallway dish and put it in a drawer. We hung our coats on the hooks and left space where his used to sit and preen. I wrote out a list on a yellow pad. Cancel the florist for this celebration dinner he had promised yet never booked. Return a bottle of wine that had been bought on hopes. Call the bank to close the account he'd opened with Lila's name and a story about investment. Ordinary tasks, but each item checked off felt like dollars saved and breaths gained. Grant came by only once, which was once too many. He didn't knock like a man who belongs. He tapped like a salesman. I met him on the porch because that was where I had fallen, and it felt right to stand straight there. He looked smaller without the navy suit, like a sentence without the part that tries too hard. "Anna," he said first, and then Lila, when she appeared behind me. He had rehearsed an apology and said it on the step between us. He spoke about wanting more than the world had offered him, about learning to signal success, about believing that if he could just look the part, the dollars would follow, and love would follow the dollars. He said he loved me. Then he said he loved Lila, and in the space between those declarations, he asked if we could lend him $300 to square things so he could start clean. It was the truest sentence he spoke. Money sat in the middle of all the others like a throne. I told him no. I said it gently, and I said it once. I told him I didn't refuse because he was poor. America is full of good people who count their dollars and make them stretch, and there is no shame in hands that smell like oil or days that end with tired feet. I refused because he had stacked lies like boards and expected us to live in the house he made. I refused because he had turned love into a ladder and people into rungs. I refused because every answer he offered us had a price tag tied to the end of it. He started to argue that a future together could still be built, that we could be partners, that he had plans, but the plans were the same fog they had always been. Lila stepped up beside me and said, in a voice I barely recognized as hers, "We are done." He looked at the porch rail where my palm had slipped, at the door that would not open to him again, and he left. By then, we had stopped trying to understand the performances and focused on the ledger of facts. Ms. Owens filed the papers in the third week. Lila signed her name with a hand that did not shake. The filing fee was $280, and I paid it without flinching. We made calls to cut the shared lines and to refuse responsibility for debts that were not ours. We returned the suit to the rental shop on Superior Avenue, and the clerk, a man with silver hair and kind eyes, thanked us for bringing it back clean. He had seen this story before. His nod said as much. On the way home, we bought 2 slices of pie for $9 from a diner that has been honest since the day it opened. We ate them at the counter with our coats still on, forks clicking on thick white plates. I felt the first true hunger I had felt in weeks. At home, I tacked a fresh pin on our map of America over Cleveland, not for a trip, but for a place survived. What truth costs, I wrote on a small card and slid the card behind the frame. The cost, as I counted it, was measured in dollars. $360, $7,480, $1,200, $150, $280, and in something harder to quantify, hours lost to worry, breaths taken shallow, a porch you can no longer step onto without remembering the drop. But the returns were real, too. The house felt honest again. Our names stood on our own feet. Lila's laugh, when it came back, had no wobble in it. Sometimes, late, we would sit at the maple table and add small columns, groceries, utilities, a little saved for winter, and we would feel rich in the way that matters. Light, steady, solvent in spirit. When the decree came by mail, 2 stapled pages in a plain envelope, Lila read it once and set it down. She did not cry. She stood at the sink and washed 2 glasses and dried them with a towel that hung on the oven door. "We're free," she said, and then she smiled at me, the quiet kind of smile that knows a bill paid is a victory. I folded the papers and placed them with the receipts we had kept, not as trophies, but as proof that we passed through and came out the far side with our own names intact. The wind eased. The house warmed. On the porch, the crooked rail waited for a hand that would hold tight and tell the truth. I started fresh because forward was the only clean direction. I took a bus to Boston, still in America, and found a tiny brown house with a sloped roof and a red door that needed paint. The price was $210,000, too large to feel safe, and just right to feel honest. The porch board sagged and the gutters leaned, but the place looked me in the eye. I made a list on a scrap of a receipt. Porch repair $600, paint $35, a second-hand table $120, 2 chairs $90, a kettle $18. I taped it to the fridge and crossed off each line with a steady pen. Work found me through a bell above a door. The bookshop on Charles Street needed morning help, and I needed the quiet trust of shelves. I stocked travel guides, cookbooks, and well-loved paperbacks, and I saved $50 from every paycheck because saving felt like breathing. That is where I met Adam Brooks on a wet Tuesday. He shook rain from his coat, asked for a slim poetry book, and smiled when I found a used copy with £4 penciled in the corner. He paid $6 and left a kind note with his name. He was a public school teacher, a man who wore time, not status, on his wrist. Adam came back on small weather days. He liked good work with a clear finish, so on Saturdays, he helped me sand the porch rail while I painted the door the brightest red the hardware store sold for $35. We ate grilled cheese and split a $9 pie from the corner bakery. He told me he had $4,300 saved toward a future down payment, and with his numbers, did not wobble. We dated like people who build, not like people who pose. Walks by the river, a lamp from a flea market for $7, an envelope in the drawer marked groceries. We got married at City Hall for $120 on a sunny Friday. Lila came on the morning train and held my hand. No orchestra, no show, just vows spoken plain, and a new key on my ring. At home, we pinned a new map and marked the American places that held us. One day, we said, we might add a modest pin for Europe, but our life is here. This block, this porch, this red door. At night, I lock it and think of the old porch in Cleveland and the cost of shine. Money can dress a story, but it cannot warm a house. Truth can. I can count it dollar by dollar, heart by heart.